Okay, hi, I'm Maria Tabane, and today we're just going to be thinking about some phonological processes. I didn't write that up there, so I'll do that now. In particular, we're going to be looking at segmental processes, so processes that just affect the segments, the consonants and the vowels. Okay, I'm going to look at some very common ones in the world's languages. Okay, so starting with assimilation, and then we'll look at another kind of, a very specific kind of assimilation called palatalization. We're going to look at vowel harmony. We're going to look at dissimilation, which is the opposite of assimilation. We're going to look at something called epenthesis and something called metathesis. They're slightly different processes. Okay, so let's just start with assimilation. And assimilation is an extremely common phonological process. Okay, it's where one segment takes on some phonological feature of an adjacent segment. Usually it's right next to the segment that's been affected. And a really simple example we can have from English, something that is called homoorganic nasal stop articulation. Assimilation, nasal stop assimilation. And this is something as simple as assimilation. Okay, so this is something as simple as if you have the word, oh well, I just wrote it up. If you have the word eligible, and if you want to make it negative, you put the in front, okay? So you know that in makes a particular word its opposite, okay? Ineligible. All right, and here we've got a word that starts with a vowel, eligible. Okay, and similarly, if we have a word like decent, well, we can make that negative by writing indecent, okay? And it stays as in, all right, with an alveolar nasal. However, if we have a word like perfect, then you know that it's not imperfect. We actually write it as imperfect. So the nasal assimilates in place to the following stop. All right. So this is homoorganic, home, same organic place. So it has the same place, nasal stop, nasal to the stop, assimilation. Okay. And this is a type of regressive assimilation. You also have, so this is regressive because this stop here is influencing what's coming before it. Okay. You can also get progressive assimilation where a segment influences what's coming up after it. That's not as common. All right. So we won't focus on that one too much. And there's other terms that people use for regressive and progressive. They say things like perseverative and anticipatory, left to right, right to left. Some people call it left to right, right to left. There's all different terms. That doesn't really matter for us. So long as we know that it's assimilation, we're okay. All right. To be honest, I get confused with the terms, regressive, progressive, and I just focus on saying, well, this stop is influencing this nasal. All right, and the nasal is agreeing in place with the stop. That's how I look at it. Okay, and then I'll stick with my green pen. Then if we have a word like correct, well, you might be thinking, oh, was I using a blue pen or a green pen before? Never mind. You might be thinking you actually write in, but if you say that word slowly, incorrect, you should notice that you actually don't have an alveolar nasal there. You have a velar nasal, incorrect. So this is, so our writing system doesn't reflect that very well. Okay, so I put it in the square brackets there for the phonetic symbol. But again, the velar nasal is assimilating to the following stop consonant, which is also velar. Recall that this is actually the velar k, voiceless velar stop there. Okay, so this is a case of nasals assimilating to stops, extremely common. I cannot overemphasize how common that is. You often get like laryngeal features assimilating, so you know if there's a following voiceless consonant, the preceding voiceless stop, then the preceding stop will also be voiceless. That happens a lot in Slavic languages. So those kinds of laryngeal features, voiced, voiceless, tend to assimilate a lot as well. Okay. So yeah, that's assimilation, extremely common. Now, the next kind of assimilation we have to deal with has a special name. It's so common, it has its own special name, and that's palatalization. So now I'll stick with really simple examples to start with, and then I'll just try and explain the leap of faith you need to make with palatalization. So, okay, we've done assimilation, now we're up to palatalization. So on a very simple level, palatal just means a y-like quality to a sound, okay? A palatal glide or palatal approximant, palatal semivowel, whatever you want to call it. And on a very simple way, we can say that in Croatian has more palatalization than Serbian, okay? And so, for instance, the word for place in Croatian is mjesto, but in Serbian it is mesto. Now, for those of you who don't know, Croatian and Serbian and Bosnian and Montenegrin, in linguistics often called BCMS, Bosnian, Croatian, Montenegrin, Serbian, are in fact the same language, okay? They're now different countries. And very different histories, okay? Croatian and Serbian use different writing systems, you know, from their predominant religious backgrounds, but from a linguistic point of view, they're the same language. They share a grammar, they share a dictionary, all that kind of stuff. But it just so happens that Croatian has more palatalization than Serbian. So we say, I'm Croatian, I have a Croatian background, sorry. So we say mjesto, and Serbian people would say mesto, okay? Similarly, so that's just a dialectal difference there, okay, from a linguistic point of view. So for instance, also in Russian, you might actually have minimal pairs. So the word for nose is nos, is the word for nose. That'll be nose. And the word for he carried is, or he or she carried, njos. And in Russian, carried. In Russian, the palatalization is phonemically meaningful. It changes the meaning of the word, all right, in that particular sense. Yes, Russian is just a slightly clearer example than BCMS. So those are some simple examples where we're just adding a little bit of a y-like quality to the m here, mj instead of m, and here to the n, the alveolar nasal, ny instead of n. All right. So those are fairly straightforward examples. When people say palatalization, they often mean something slightly different, and you're going to need to have a little bit of a leap of faith here. And I'll draw up our diagram here to to do that. Okay, so if you may recall our toothy diagram here. So here's our tooth, there's our alveolar ridge, and then back here we go. So alveolar ridge, post-alveolar, and this is all the hard palate, okay? And all of this is palatal. Okay, and then here, behind where the teeth end, the rearmost molars end, we have the velar region, and here we have the alveolar region, of course. Alrighty. Now, what your leap of faith is, is that usually when people mean palatalization, they're actually talking about something ending up not as a y type sound, but as a sh or j type sound. All right, so something that is actually post-alveolar. I'll see if I can do that. Post-alveolar, okay. Strictly speaking, all right. And the thing about palatal sounds like y is they're really powerful. They involve a very large part of the tongue. They involve a very large part of the front part of the tongue and a very large part of the back part of the tongue as well. All right, and so they force velars to move forward, and they force alveolars to move back. All right, so if you have a palatal sound, following an alveolar, it might get pulled back to post-alveolar. And similarly, if you have a velar sound followed by a palatal, that velar will get pulled forward to something that is also palatal or post-alveolar. All right. Now, so a simple example from Russian, again, or many Slavic languages, their word for God is Borg. Okay, means God. But if they want to say, oh my God, and it's a vocative case, so you're calling out to God, they actually say, you know what, I should have done that in, never mind. So G is correct, I'll leave that there. But if they were to say, oh my God, they actually say, Bože moj. Okay, so I'm just going to write that in phonemics, and I'll just do the same here. So what's happened there is the G, the velar, has been pulled forward to a J, post-alveolar, and it's actually happened. It's this following front vowel E that's doing it. So remember, front vowels are palatal vowels, and back vowels are velar vowels. Okay. And so what's happened is that E has pulled that G forward, and it's ended up more as a J. All right. We have a similar but kind of opposite process in English. Well, not an example in English, where an alveolar gets pulled back. So I'm sure that many of you, the word tune, as in I tuned the piano tuner came around the other day, tune, I bet that many of you would actually pronounce that tune. Oh gosh, what have I done there? I meant to do a ligature, not a dental diacritic. Tune. Okay, so what's happened there is the alveolar T is followed by a palatal. And so then what was alveolar up here, T, has been pulled back to a post-alveolar, and it's ended up as an affricate Ch. So T plus Y has ended up as Ch, because that Y, what happened was, if you get this bit, great. If you don't worry about it. What happened is that we had the T alveolar closure, okay, but we had a following Y. So there was a fair bit of tongue body raising there. Okay, and so because of that high degree of tongue body raising, we end up with a little bit of a fricative, which is sh. Okay, and it's because of that tongue body raising for the following y behind the t. So plain alveolar, but it's anticipating. It is anticipating a following y, and so we're going to get a small closure. When we've got a small constriction, we end up with a lot of frication, and it ends up getting fricated, and it ends up as this sort of post-alveolar fricative. Now, this process would also be called palatalization. Okay, so that's your leap of faith there. Okay, these processes also get called palatalization, and it's because somewhere in the local environment there is something that is palatal. It could be a palatal type vowel, a palatal glide, and it is somehow affecting the consonant. All right, so it is a type of assimilation, a very common one. It just gets its own special name. All right, so I hope you're able to make that little bit of a leap of faith. All right. Okay, let's go on to, let's do vowel harmony next. All right, so let's do a bit of wiping down. So vowel harmony is not super common, but not unheard of either. Famous examples of vowel harmony are in Turkish and Hungarian and Finnish. But today we're just going to have a little bit of a think about Scots. Some of that might be a little bit more, you might have a bit more experience of that, and I'm just working hard here on the rubbing out. So vowel harmony is, I guess, also a type of assimilation because the vowels are agreeing in some feature across the word. So Yeah, it is also a type of assimilation. Sorry, I'm not looking at you as I'm rubbing this off, but there we go, got there. So yeah, vowel harmony are where the vowels within a word, and they're in different syllables, but they all agree somehow in some feature. So in Scots, for instance, let's look at some words. So there's the word here, which means hairy, someone with a lot of hair, here. We're going to look at the ending e, okay. And then we've got messe, as in someone might have messe hair. And roque, so I guess a landscape could be rocky, so that would be roque. Okay. However, someone might be snooty. Okay, so you know someone who's snooty is a bit like that. And really, so really, as in really, okay. So what we're seeing here, so these are all, we would in English write all of these with the letter Y for the most part, okay. So they're all the same ending, okay, working from a noun, hair, mess, rock, real, I guess isn't a noun, never mind. Yeah, I don't know, we'll ignore soot. But, you know, turning it into a sort of a adjective. Okay, so it's an adjectival ending. All right. Now notice, when the vowel is high, I and U, the ending is also the high vowel I. Okay? So we're doing vowel harmony now. All right. However, when the vowel is, look, I left one out. Oh yeah, lasse, that's right, I knew I left one out. Similarly, sorry, lasse, it's e, okay. Lasse, I guess a, oh, that's not an adjective, is it? Oh well, never mind. Lassie, I think, is a noun. You know, I don't really know my Scots very well, sorry. So I think I've got all the examples up now, yeah. So when the vowel is not high, so high mid, low mid, and low, that's actually a, yeah, I won't say what that vowel is. So when the vowel is not high, so anything from high mid, low mid to low, it gets the ending e. All right. So this is vowel harmony. The ending vowel here is agreeing in some way with the vowel in the root. Okay, so we've got our root vowel, her, mes, rock, las, snut, ril, and then the ending will agree with the vowel. It pays attention to what vowel has come before. That is vowel harmony, keeping the vowels happy within the word. And it is a form of assimilation, okay? It's just going across the consonant, okay? So it's transconsonantal assimilation across the consonant. Okay, so vowel harmony is another kind of assimilation. You do also get consonant harmony, meaning that the different consonants in a word agree, so they don't necessarily have to be next to each other. It's not as common, but there would be some famous examples from Sanskrit, the classical language of India. So yeah, so vowel harmony is more common than consonant harmony. Alrighty, let's rub this out, keep going, and hope for the best. So, what's next? Consonant harmony. Dissimilation, right, yeah, how are we going for time? I think we might be able to manage this one. Okay, so dissimilation is, right, obviously the opposite of assimilation. And the particular example we're going to look at does involve consonants across the word. Dissimilation isn't super frequent, pretty rare, but it's, well, historically important. There's some important historical examples involving dissimilation. And my favourite example is Latin liquid dissimilation. Okay. Liquid dissimilation. Okay, so you will know a word like nav alis. Okay, and I'm going to underline here the liquid L. So liquids are L and R, okay? And maybe I'll try to navalis, L and R. Okay, so that's fine. Alis is the ending naval, okay? Again, an adjectival ending. Okay, I'm just going to change this so I can see my examples here, otherwise I'll forget them. All right. And we could also have the word like criminalis. That's okay, we've still got the L there. All right, let's pay attention. What's another example? Aha. Sol aris. Now it's changed. All of a sudden we've got a R. Have I got a pink somewhere I can use? I think I've got a pink. It's changed to a R. Okay. Let's keep going and see if we can figure out why. Maybe you can tell from the title, dissimilation. Now what I was using the orange to write. Okay. Then we have milit aris. Again a R. Underline that in pink. And then we've got floralis. Okay, I'll leave floralis till last. What seems to be going on here is, if we've got a R, so here we haven't got any R or L in the root, and what ends up as the ending is alis with the lateral. Here we've got a R, erotic, in the root, and we still get the lateral in the ending, okay, alis. However, here we've got a lateral in the root. And this is a dissimilation rule. So the adjectival ending has to take the opposite of what is in the root. Dissimilation, the opposite. So we get the erotic instead of the liquid, instead of the lateral. They're both liquids, sorry. It's really easy to make that mistake, sorry. Both of them are liquids. This is a lateral, this is erotic, okay. So erotic, okay. Right, militaris, here, and so here again we've got the L, the lateral, and so the ending is dissimilated, aris, with a erotic R. Okay, and the final example is floralis. Let's get this right. Alis. And now let's have a look. We've got the L ending, but we also have a L over here, a lateral over here. But we've got a R in the middle, okay, erotic in the middle. So what this example tells us, and it's an important example, is that the ending agrees with the most, disagrees, dissimilation, disagrees with the most recent liquid in the root. Okay, so it ignores the one that came before. What matters is the one that came last, and it's going to dissimilate from that. It's interesting also that even in the root, they're dissimilated. Okay. And there are general phonological principles where certain words don't tend to like to repeat certain features within the word itself, okay? And features like liquids is just, you know, anyway, it is interesting that even in the root they don't want to have two laterals or two erotics, okay? But the ending is definitely going to disagree with whatever comes last. Okay, so that's dissimilation. All right, I'm just gonna pause it there and come back for the last two. Okay, back again, and I just realised I forgot to write my name, so might as well do that now. Okay, I'm Maria Tavine, and we're just continuing on with some segmental processes. Okay, so we were up to epenthesis. So epenthesis is an interesting one. And I do just want to warn you, a lot of things get labelled epenthesis that, strictly speaking, isn't. So let me give you an example of something that is epenthesis. Epenthesis is insertion of an extra segment, a consonant or a vowel, but it's breaking up illegal clusters of consonants or illegal sequences of vowels as far as the grammar of the language is concerned. That's the important bit. Somehow it fixes up something that the grammar of the language does not like. Okay. And maybe an example that will speak to many people is Japanese borrowings of words from English. In English, we are very permissive with how many consonants we allow, how many in clusters, both in the onset and in the coda of a syllable. We're very permissive. Japanese isn't. Japanese likes CV syllables, consonant vowel, and if it has a CVC syllable, it is actually CVN, where N is a nasal. All right, it's got there's other possibilities, but it is very strict. Very strict. It's either CV or CVC, and if it's CVC, there are certain restrictions on what the coda consonant can be. All right, usually a nasal, but it can be the first of a geminate consonant with the following consonant is the same. Doesn't matter. All right. Sorry, my habit of going off on a tangent. So for instance, if Japanese borrows a word like Christian, the boy's name, or the religion, okay. Now I got these examples from Professor Kaori Okano, who is a Japanese teacher, so I'm going to assume that they are the way it should be. So Christian, and I'm not going to write the Japanese because I don't know how to, Christian would come out as Kuri Su Chan, and she, yep. All right, and you know that in English we would write that as something like Chris Chan. Okay. So clearly, Japanese does not like this kr consonant cluster, all right? And it is inserting a vowel to break up that cluster so that we end up with a CV syllable, all right? Now we've got the ri copied, that's fine, the ri's there. Now here we've got another cluster, ch. Japanese doesn't like that. It wants consonant vowel. So it's going to insert another u, CV. Make sure we've got a CV syllable there. Okay, and then the chan, chun, that's all fine. Japanese, it's okay. We can have a final nasal in the CVC syllable. That's okay. I think what Kaori wrote here was something that they call moras. In Japanese, they count their moras quite separately. So the a is one mora, and then the is a separate mora. Okay. Which we do in the class on syllable structure. Okay, and similarly, if we have the word a girl's name Crystal, or I guess Crystal is also I don't know much my geology. I don't know if it's a mineral or a rock or one of those things, which I guess we would write crystal here. They would write that as kuri. The ri is okay. Kuri sutaru. Sutaru. I wrote the ad that way. Look, just ignore me. Sutaru. That's good. So crystal. So again, we're breaking up the kr to become a CB. Ri is okay. Sut, again, we're just breaking that up. We don't like st. We're breaking that up to be a CB, sutta. And then Japanese does not allow laterals in the coda. Okay? Doesn't allow them. And so they are going to fix that by adding another epenthetic vowel. So these are all epenthetic vowels. All right? All the U's we've been looking at are epenthetic. They're inserted to break up something that is illegal in the language. It's a fix, all right? Another example, just to finish off, I think I can do that, will be Melbourne. So in English, Melbourne, and I'll probably have to do this with an American pronunciation for it to make sense, but it would be Melbourne or something like that, okay? So just cope with me for the American pronunciation, Melbourne. Okay, because they'll be taking their pronunciations from American English. Okay, Melbourne. And so in Japanese it is meruborun. Me, ru, bo, ru, and shian. No. Okay. So I was just checking what she what she wrote for me. So me is okay. However, b is not. Okay. So they also don't really have a separate lateral. They sort of have this liquid in Japanese, and it could be a lateral, it could be erotic, it could be in between. Maybe sometimes it's like one, sometimes it's more like the other. Anyway, they've changed this into a r, so I don't want to get bogged down into that. But they've fixed the syllable structure by making it CV. All right, consonant vowel. And then the bo is okay. Now the earn is not okay. They wouldn't want a liquid followed by a nasal. It's a cluster. They don't like it. So we're going to fix that as well and make that CV. So the u is epenthetic in these examples. We've had an epenthetic u. Oh dear. Oh, well, I didn't want to put the epenthetic u. It is clearly inserted to fix an error in the borrowed word. Okay. Yeah. So I just want to say quickly that this is different to something that some textbooks will give as examples of what is epenthesis. All right. So some textbooks will give examples like hamster. Okay. And that is clearly not. And I'll just, once I get all this off, oh dear me, I'll explain what. So, oh, gosh. All right. Okay, you can have a think about why hamster. I'll write it up, and while I finish rubbing it off, you can have a think about why and I'll write it. Will I write it in phonetics or will I write it in? Okay, well, you know the word hamster. Okay. And some people would say that it is pronounced with a P in the middle. And sometimes they will call that epenthetic, but it's not. It's something called excrescent. And while I'm finishing rubbing off down the bottom, you have a think about why this doesn't fit in with what I said epenthetic segments are, stops or we saw vowels in Japanese. But you have a think about why the p is not epenthetic. Okay, and I'm nearly there. Oh, okay. Now that p is what we call excreted. Okay, it's a horrible word, but it is excreted as a natural part of the phonetic process. Here we've got a nasal, and that means that our velopharyngeal port is lowered and the air is flowing through nicely. Okay. Following it in the phonological representation of the word is a fricative. S. Hamster, hamster. You can say it without the p, all right? Hamster. Now this fricative requires a very high rate of airflow. Fricatives require, a very critical constriction in the oral cavity, and the airflow needs to build up to become noisy, okay? It can take a little bit of time. If we don't get that timing quite right, where the velum seals off the velopharyngeal port, nasopharyngeal port, and if we haven't quite built up our air pressure for the following s, we might still be left with a bilabial closure, but we've actually sealed off our nasal cavity so that the air is not flowing out anymore. So we've sealed it off, all right, But we haven't yet started our alveolar tongue tip gesture for the S, for the fricative itself. Okay, so in the meantime, between closing off the nasal cavity for the N to get to the S and actually starting the S with the tongue tip, we've still got a bilabial closure, all right? But it's not nasal anymore, it's oral, okay? It's just a stop, oral stop, okay? So we say that the P is excreted in that case, all right? I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So it arises as part of the natural phonetic processes, all right, transitioning from the M to the S, all right. This is not epenthetic in any way. It is not breaking up a cluster that is illegal in English. We have lots of examples of MS clusters, not at the beginnings of words, but at the ends, you know, the Christmas hams. Oh no, that's ham. Well, that's anyway. Oops, that's z, voiced one. But there would be lots of words with ms. So plimsoll, I don't know, plimsoll. It's not a problem, okay, to have ms. All right, in the middle of a word. There'd be lots of them. So there's nothing actually wrong with the ms cluster. We don't need to fix it. So epenthetic stops or epenthetic vowels fix something that is illegal in the language. And in English, something like ms is not illegal, so it doesn't need to be fixed. All right. So just be aware sometimes when you're, sometimes, you know, textbooks aren't quite up to date with correct thinking. So, yep, okay. Lucky last is metathesis. So metathesis is a not a very common process, quite rare as well, but it's another process that can have a lot of historical importance with sound change, sounds that change over time. And my favourite example is VC metathesis in Slavic. VC metathesis. Oh, it's actually. Oh, I should call it vowel liquid metathesis. Sorry. It's actually specifically vowel liquid metathesis in vowel liquid metathesis in Slavic. A historically very important process. Okay, so I'll use the Serbian examples here because it's easier than the Croatian ones, which have that palatalization issue that can be a bit confusing. So the word for an enclosure, okay, as in a garden, used to be gordu, and I don't know how this was pronounced. There'll be people who are better at this than I am, gordu, but in Serbian now, it is pronounced as grad. So this is late Common Slavic, and this is modern day Serbian, grad. Okay, so it means like enclosure or garden. You know this word as garden in English, all right? It's from our word for garden, with trees and flowers. In Slavic, it came to mean it's an enclosure as in a city type situation. Grad is their word for city. So, you know, lots of Russian cities like Petrograd, Stalingrad, I dare say capital of Serbia, Belgrade. Okay, so what's happened phonologically? Sorry, I'm bogged down in the meaning. The vowel and the liquid have flipped. All right, metathesis is about flipping. All right, it's about flipping, gordu, or became ra. Forget about the vowel change, that's just something else that happened over the hundreds of years, okay? So we're just doing metathesis now. So it's this flipping two segments. Another word would be, used to be golva, I think they had the stress on the second syllable. Anyway, it's now glava, meaning head, up here, all right? Again, we flipped, all la became la. Forget the vowel quality change, the point is that they've flipped their place. All right. And another word that should speak to you, melko, Can you guess what that word is? Melko, sorry, I think it was actually Melko. Oh, it looks like it's got a falling accent. Oh, some sort. Anyway, Melko, something like that. You might recognise that word from English as milk. Okay. But in Serbian, it is mleko. Okay. And again, we flipped, in this case, the vowel quality stayed the same. L has flipped to L-E. Okay, so this is vowel, liquid, metathesis. Okay, the vowel and the liquid, in this case we've just seen laterals. No, we haven't. Brain fade, Maria. We had a R up here. We had the rhotic. Okay, so we had R and L. All right. Yeah, so R and L. So they were affected by this process. Okay, within the syllable. So look, it's not a very common process, as I said. It can target specific lexical items, like in English. You might know some people say, instead of ask, they'll say asks. If I've asked you once, I've asked you 1,000 times. Okay, so it seems to, for some reason, it can target consonant clusters, but it targets particular lexical items, particular words for some reason. And they flip. All right, and sibilant S, the alveolar fricative, does seem to turn up reasonably often in these kinds of metathesis processes. It can target even stop clusters, especially like in BCMS, Bosnian Croatian, Montenegrin Serbian. The word for who is tko, but in Russian it is kto. BCMS, and here's Russian. Okay, so we flipped the tk to the kt. Historically, okay, historically this happened at some point, all right, over hundreds of years. So that's an example of historical metathesis, all right, as of course the more famous example of vowel liquid metathesis in Slavic. Okay, it doesn't seem to target vowel-vowel sequences, so we don't really see things happening like, you wouldn't see I, no, like, oh, oops, that's no good. You wouldn't see A become yeah. That wouldn't happen. Okay. That, for some reason, that doesn't seem to happen. All right. Or even without the ligature to show that it's a diphthong. If they were genuinely sequences in separate syllables, broken up by a syllable, yeah, that just doesn't seem to happen. All right. So yeah, that's it for the various processes. I hope it's given you a little bit of an overview of what tends to happen in the world's languages. That's it. Bye.